Hello and welcome to In Depth with TommieMedia. I'm Emily Haugen. Election Day 2020 is less than a month away, and the question of how and when to vote has come to the forefront. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, leaders across the country are encouraging Americans to vote early or by mail. During his time in office, Minnesota Secretary of State Steve Simon's work has focused on expanding and verifying the right to vote, including sending a vote from home letter to registered voters. Today, Secretary Simon will join us over Zoom, and we will discuss Simon's Vote from Home initiatives and the 2020 election. Secretary Simon, thank you for joining us. So, the Minnesota Department of Health has recommended that voters consider voting alternatives to limit COVID-19 spread. So, voting from home is a platform that you've championed this election season. In response to this push, how many mail-in ballots are you expecting?
That's a great question. The numbers have so far been really just off the charts. Just to put it in perspective, we reported a few days ago that 1.2 million Minnesotans have already, with about a month to go, have already requested that their ballot be sent to them at home. To put that number in perspective, the last presidential election 4 years ago, it was a couple 100,000 people, and we're already at 1.2. I would guess it's going to climb a good bit yet, maybe a couple 100,000 more. So we're looking at a lot of folks. And to put that number in perspective, we're expecting about 3 million voters or so, maybe a little bit more. So we're looking at comfortably a third, maybe 40%, possibly higher than that will be voting from home. And that will have a lot of downstream effects, including fewer people at the polling place.
Okay, that is a big jump. How will Minnesota accommodate that increase?
Well, fortunately, the legislature and the courts have gone to work and have acted to make those accommodations. So from the legislative standpoint, one thing that they do, and I know this sounds super technical, but it's like a really big deal, is they gave local elections administrators, the counties, the cities, the folks who actually do the counting of the ballots, they gave them a head start this year of 14 days. So they can start digging into that mountain of mail that is sitting there, all those returned ballots, they can start digging in on day minus 14. They don't have to wait till election day. They can rip them open, they can evaluate them, and they can stick them right in the tabulating machines. That's going to make a huge difference just in terms of smoothness, organization, and all the rest. So we're well positioned there. Then the courts have stepped in, and because of some litigation, much of which was settled, we have some new rules in place. One key rule that we have in place, and the number one thing that I hope anyone remembers, if they remember nothing else of what I said today, it's this one thing. And this one thing is that the rule this year and this year only, it's a 2020 special, very on brand for this unconventional year. Just this year, the rule is you can postmark that ballot by election day, as late as election day. You don't have to get it in by election day. You can postmark it election day as long as it gets in and arrives 1 week later by Tuesday, November 10th. One way to look at that is every single Minnesotan now has an automatic 7-day period built in to get that thing from point A to point B. So that's one way to accommodate those huge numbers.
That's really nice. So, as the election comes closer, increasing concerns of voter fraud have emerged, though the Heritage Fund's election fraud database reported there are only 9 cases of Minnesota voter fraud in the last 4 years. So, what measures will Minnesota be taking to ensure its results are legitimate?
Yeah, great question. And this comes up a lot with this spike that we're talking about in mail voting and voting from home. And we, fortunately in Minnesota, we have triple layers of security, 3 different layers of security for all mail-in ballots. And so sometimes I get the question, not to hijack your question, but sometimes I get it in a different form, and sometimes it will be this. Hey, look, you're talking about 1.2 million people who have ordered this ballot to come to them at home through the mail. You know, that's a lot of blank ballots just floating out there for the taking, for the swiping, for the intercepting. What's to prevent someone from going from mailbox to mailbox and just taking a bunch of ballots and voting them? They're blank ballots. Great question and fair question. But in Minnesota, we've got that covered. In Minnesota, for example, we're one of the few states where when you order that ballot, you have to provide some personal identifying information when you order it. So it can be part of a social security number. It can be a driver's license number. It can be a few things. And it will only be counted on the way back once you voted that ballot if it is accompanied by that same personal identifying information. So back to the mailbox thief for a minute. The mailbox thief could steal 2 or 5 or 10 or 100 or 1,000, vote them all, think he's getting away with something, but I can tell you this, those ballots that he sends in will never be counted. The joke is on him. They will be destroyed. And the reason is he would have to know not only the personal identifying information for someone, but the precise form that the intended voter used when the intended voter ordered that ballot. Plus, the backup is a signature requirement. Every voter is asked to sign the outside of the security envelope, not the ballot itself, but the envelope. So not only would he have to have all that information, he'd have to be a pretty good forger as well. And that's why when I've asked around the state whether folks have ever seen a case where someone successfully, though illegally, intercepted a ballot and successfully voted it, the answer is no, they haven't seen a case. That doesn't mean there wasn't one, but the experts I talk to don't know of one.
Okay, that makes sense. So, as we discussed today, the voting system for this year's election is unconventional. So, how do you think this year's voting system will change future elections?
That is a great question, and I thought about that myself. So, with the surge in people voting from home, I wonder: are these one-timers, or are these folks who are just going to switch this way permanently? Will people like the comfort and convenience of voting from home with their feet up and while they're watching TV and folding laundry and doing whatever else? Or will they say, no, this was just a one-time thing. It was COVID related. I wanted to protect myself and those at the polling place. I don't know. I think it's somewhere in between. If I had to guess, I would say some sizable percentage will probably not go back to the traditional way of voting in person, and some will. I don't know what those percentages will be, but it's part of a trend that was already forming even before COVID-19, which is more and more people opting for this way of voting.
I'm interested to see how it does shape things. So, what do college students who will vote this fall need to know about the process?
I mean, I think what they need to know is that there are just multiple options to vote. So there's so much focus, particularly on campuses, on in-person voting on election day, about polling places and where to go. And look, all methods of legal voting are equally legitimate and equally worthy. But you don't have to go to a polling place. I mean, that's the traditional way, but you don't have to do that. One way to minimize hassle for students and really everyone is to, for example, go in and vote in person, not on election day, vote in person absentee, as it's called. And we're in the middle of that period right now. So for any Tommy out there who's wondering, where to go, and you don't, if you're not sure where to go, you can go to our website, which is mnvotes.org, mnvotes.org. Type in your address, your information, and it'll tell you where to go to vote in person absentee, meaning you can avoid the game day, election day hassle and lines and all the rest, and go in during business hours. Typically, it's a city or county building. So that's one option. The other option is to do it by mail. Just go to mnvotes.org. It'll take you a maximum of 5 minutes. Go to that website and order the ballot to come to you. That's another way that you can avoid the hassle and potential confusion of game day or election day at a polling place. Again, all three are equally legitimate, but there are options. There are just several options. Those are the big three.
All right, mnvotes.org. Secretary Simon, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
If there's a topic you would like covered on In Depth, tweet us at TommieMedia. With Secretary Steve Simon, I'm Emily Haugen. We'll see you next time we go in depth on TommieMedia.